I sat in the front pew of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, surrounded by lilies, but I was utterly alone. The mahogany casket holding my husband of 43 years, Deacon Jeremiah Washington, gleamed under the soft lights of the sanctuary. The air was thick with the scent of white lilies and the sound of a mournful organ, but all I could feel was the vast echoing emptiness of the seats beside me. That front pew reserved for family was a testament to my shame. There was me, and then there were 5 empty spaces. I could feel the eyes of the congregation on my back. I knew those looks. They were looks of pity, confusion, and a quiet, sad judgment. Deacon Charles and Sister Lillian Stone, our friends for over 30 years, sat 2 rows back. I had caught Sister Lillian's eye earlier. She looked like her heart was breaking for me, her glance flicking from my face to the empty chairs and back again. She knew. They all knew. My children Marcus and Angela were not here. I was numb. It was a cold, hard numbness that had settled deep in my bones, a shield against the grief that I knew was waiting like a flood behind a dam. Jeremiah was gone. My partner, the man I had built a life with, the man who tended his rose garden with the same care he tended our marriage, was gone. But beneath that numbness, something else was beginning to dawn, a cold, hard realization that felt like ice water in my veins. The young pastor, a man Jeremiah had always said had a good heart, but a new spine, leaned in his voice a low, awkward whisper. Mrs. Washington, Eliza, should we perhaps wait a few more minutes for Marcus and Angela? A tremor went through me, but it was not sadness. It was anger. No, Pastor, I said. My voice came out firmer than I expected, cutting through the organ music. We will start on time. My husband hated delays. The pastor nodded, surprised by my tone, and signaled to the organist. As the music swelled for the opening hymn, my mind drifted away from the sanctuary and to the phone calls. The call from Marcus, my firstborn, had come 2 days ago. His voice was slick, rushed the way it always was when he was about to ask for something or avoid something. Mom, I'm just crushed. But this Miami deal, it is unavoidable. It is the biggest of my career. You know how it is. Dad would understand. He knew how important my work is. I will make it up to you, I promise. I will be there in a week or 2. He had hung up before I could say a word. Unavoidable. Jeremiah had used his own vacation days unpaid to attend every single one of Marcus's college football games, even when he was just sitting on the bench. But his father's funeral was unavoidable. Angela was worse. My daughter, my baby girl, had not even bothered to call. A single text message had blinked onto my phone screen while I was at the funeral home finalizing the program. Indisposed mom. Just cannot travel right now. My heart is there. Will call when I can. Indisposed. The vagueness of it was a slap in the face. What did that mean? A cold, a headache. This was her father, the man who had stayed up all night building her a dollhouse for Christmas because he could not afford the one she wanted in the store. The man who walked her down the aisle at an extravagant wedding we paid for. Indisposed. The service began. The pastor spoke of a good man, but his words were generic, hollow. He did not know Jeremiah. He did not know the man who got up at 5 every morning to read his Bible, the man who organized the church's community food drive, the man who would sit on the porch with me every evening holding my hand, no words needed. Then Deacon Stone. Our Charles stood up to give the eulogy. His voice, thick with emotion, filled the church. He spoke of Jeremiah's unwavering commitment. Jeremiah Washington, he said, his voice booming, was a man who showed up. He showed up for his Lord. He showed up for his church. And Lord knows, he showed up for his family. Every word was a fresh wound, highlighting the betrayal radiating from those empty seats. I stared straight ahead at the casket, my back rigid. I would not cry. I would not give them the satisfaction of my tears not here. The procession to the graveyard was a blur. The cold October wind whipped at my face as I stood by the open grave. When the pastor offered me the small shovel of dirt, I took it. The clods of earth hit the mahogany lid with a hollow final thud. Thud, thud, thud. The sound of my children's absence. I thought of the sacrifices. Jeremiah working 2 jobs for 20 years, his day job at the post office, his weekend job as a handyman. So Marcus and Angela could have the Ivy League educations and private schools he never did. So they could start their lives without the burden of debt that had saddled us. He never missed a recital, a graduation, a game. He was their biggest cheerleader, their most reliable supporter. And in his final, most important moment, they had abandoned him. I returned to the house, our house. The silence was deafening. It was no longer the peaceful quiet of a shared life. It was the suffocating silence of an empty one. Jeremiah's favorite armchair sat empty in the den. His reading glasses were still on the side table. I walked into the kitchen, my movements stiff. I picked up my phone, the same phone that had delivered Angela's cowardly text. I was driven by a sudden cold need to see the truth. I knew my children. I knew their lies. But this time, I needed to see it for myself. Indisposed? I muttered, my thumb hovering over the Instagram app Jamal, my grandson, had installed for me. Unavoidable. My heart was pounding, not with grief, but with a terrible clarifying dread. I opened the app. The house was silent, but the small glowing screen in my hand was screaming the truth louder than any gospel choir. My grandson Jamal had set up this Instagram for me a year ago, bless his heart. He said it was so I could see pictures of him at college and what Aunt Angela is up to. I had mostly used it to look at pictures of gardens and quilt making. Now I opened it with a purpose. Angela's profile was the first on my feed she had posted. Of course she had. My daughter could not breathe without documenting it. The photo hit me like a physical blow. There she was, my daughter Angela, raising a champagne glass on the deck of a gleaming white yacht. She was wearing a tiny bathing suit and a wide-brimmed hat, her smile radiant, not a shadow of grief in sight. The location tag clear as day, Nassau, Bahamas. I looked at the timestamp. 3 hours ago. 3 hours ago, I was standing over her father's open grave. Her caption read, "Living my best life. #blessed." I swallowed, but my throat was too dry. Indisposed, she had texted. She was indisposed because she was on a vacation cruise. She was celebrating while I was burying the man who gave her everything. The heart, she said, was there with me, was clearly in the Bahamas toasting her own blessed life. A cold dread, sharp and acidic, filled me. If she had lied so brazenly, what about Marcus? I did not have his wife's number, but I knew her name. I typed it into the search bar. Her profile, unlike her husband's, was wide open to the public. She loved to show off. I scrolled down. 1 post, 2, and then there it was. a selfie of her and Marcus grinning on a lush green golf course. Marcus had his arm slung around another man, both of them wearing expensive polo shirts and holding cigars. My son, who claimed an unavoidable deal, looked relaxed, triumphant, and utterly carefree. His wife's caption, "Celebrating the big Miami deal early. So proud of my man, #winning." The unavoidable meeting was a celebratory round of golf. The numbness that had protected me for days did not just crack, it shattered. It was replaced by a clarifying glacial rage. This was not simple neglect. This was not just being too busy. This was active celebratory deceit. They had not just missed their father's funeral, they had skipped it. They had lied to my face to their father's memory and felt nothing. They were partying while I, their mother, sat alone in a church, shouldering the grief and the shame for them. I closed the phone and placed it on the kitchen counter as if it were contaminated. My hands were shaking, but not with weakness. It was with a terrible righteous strength. I walked out of the kitchen past the empty armchair and into Jeremiah's study. His presence was everywhere. The smell of his pipe tobacco, faint but comforting. The neat stacks of books on his desk, history, theology, gardening. His glasses still lay where he had left them. For a moment the grief threatened to overwhelm me again, but the rage held it back. I went to his bookshelf, to the item he treasured most. It was not a stock certificate or a deed. It was his old, worn, black, leather-bound King James Bible, the one his own mother had given him, the one he read from at this very desk every single morning. I opened it. The pages were soft as old cotton, filled with his faint pencil markings. And tucked inside the front cover, just as I knew it would be, was the small black ledger. I had always known he kept it. He called it his accounting, but it was not for taxes. I sat in his chair, the leather cool against my skin, and I opened it. Page after page, all in Jeremiah's meticulous, careful handwriting, told the story of the last 25 years. $10,000, Marcus business loan unpaid. $20,000, Angela wedding deposit for the photographer alone. $7,000, Marcus car repair for the BMW. $15,000, Angela down payment help for the condo she sold 2 years later. $30,000, Marcus investment lost. $12,000, Angela to help with the baby for a European vacation. It went on and on. Decades of financial draining, decades of our savings. Jeremiah's hard-earned money disappearing into the black holes of their entitled lives. I turned to the last page. An entry from just 6 months ago, right after Jeremiah's diagnosis. His handwriting was a little shakier, but the words were firm. Lord, I have given them everything. The house is paid for. The cabin is free and clear. There is enough. But I fear I have given them so much stuff, they have forgotten how to be. I pray they find their way back to you. A man's inheritance is his name, not just his wallet. A single tear, hot and angry, rolled down my cheek and splashed onto the page. He knew, and he had hoped, and he had prayed. But he had died alone, abandoned by the very children he had documented, financed, and prayed for. The combination of those glowing Instagram photos and this sober black ledger solidified my resolve. This was not grief talking. This was not an emotional, hasty decision. This was justice. This was an accounting. This was for Jeremiah. I closed the ledger. I placed it back in the Bible. I stood up and walked to the small table by the door where Jeremiah kept his Rolodex. I flipped through the cards until I found the one I was looking for. I picked up the phone. My hand was perfectly steady. Mr. Ben Carter's office. Yes. I said, my voice clear and cold. This is Eliza Washington. I need to see him tomorrow. It is about my husband's will. Eliza has just made a powerful decision, and we're about to see the consequences. But before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We love knowing how far our stories travel. Now let's see what happens at the lawyer's office. Attorney Ben Carter's office smelled of old books and fresh coffee, the scent of endings and new beginnings. His practice was in a respected old brick building downtown, the kind of place that signaled stability, not flash. Ben was more than just our lawyer. He was a fellow deacon at Ebenezer, a man who had served on the church board with Jeremiah for 30 years. He was a good man. He rose from his heavy oak desk as his secretary showed me in his face a mask of practiced professional sorrow. He was a tall man, always impeccably dressed, and he came around the desk to take both my hands in his. Eliza, my dear, I am so sorry for your loss. His voice was warm and sincere. Jeremiah was a pillar of this community, a true friend. I was heartbroken to hear the news. Please sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water. I am fine, Ben. Thank you, I said, taking the leather chair opposite his desk. I waited until he had settled back into his own seat. He started to offer more condolences, to talk about the funeral, to reminisce. I held up a hand gently, but firmly. Ben, I said, my voice as steady as the oak desk between us. I appreciate your kindness, truly I do. But I'm here today not out of grief, but out of clarity. I need to change the will. Immediately. Ben's kind expression faltered. He tented his fingers, his lawyer's face taking over. Eliza, he said cautiously, his tone shifting. I understand this is a terrible time, but decisions made in haste, especially during bereavement, they can be challenged. They are often not what the person truly wants once the fog of grief has lifted. There is no fog, Ben, I replied. I reached into my purse. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I simply placed my phone on his desk, the screen glowing. Opened to Angela's Instagram page, the picture of her on the yacht Champagne, glass high. That was taken during your friend's funeral, I said. Then I reached back into my purse and pulled out the small black ledger. I placed it on his desk right next to the phone. And this, I said, tapping the worn cover, is the gratitude Jeremiah received for funding their lives for the last 25 years. They were partying Ben, both of them, while I put my husband in the ground. They lied to me. They lied to his memory. Ben Carter looked at the phone, his eyes narrowing. He picked it up and read the caption. I saw his jaw tighten. He put the phone down and pulled the ledger toward him. He opened it. He was silent for a long time. As a lawyer, he understood ledgers. He paged through his expression, hardening with every line of Jeremiah's meticulous script. He saw the business loans to Marcus, the down payment help for Angela. He was a man who had known Jeremiah's financial prudence. He was seeing in black and white the decades of financial hemorrhaging. When he finally closed the book, he looked up at me. The pity in his eyes was gone. It was replaced by a steely, righteous resolve. He was no longer just my lawyer. He was Jeremiah's friend. I see. He said, his voice quiet but cold. You are right, Eliza. This is not grief. This is an accounting. What do you want to do? The words were ready. I had rehearsed them all night. I want to remove Marcus Washington from the will. I want to remove Angela Price from the will, completely. I want them to receive $1 each and not a penny more. I want everything this house, the cabin in North Georgia, the investments, every last cent to go to Jamal. Ben nodded once, not surprised. To Jamal Price, your grandson, Angela's son. He is the only one who was there, I said. He is the only one who deserves it. Ben turned to his computer. I agree, but we will be smart about this. We will not give a windfall to a 22-year-old. We will put it all in an ironclad trust. We will name a neutral third party as the trustee. The trust will pay for his education, college, graduate school, whatever he needs. It can be used for a medical emergency or a down payment on a modest first home. But he cannot access the principal, not until he is 30. He looked at me over his glasses. This will also do something else, Eliza. It will protect the assets from his parents. They will not be able to get their hands on it, no matter how much they manipulate or threaten him. Do you agree? Yes, I said. That is exactly what Jeremiah would have wanted. Protect the boy. Protect the legacy. It took less than an hour. He had the existing will on file. He dictated the changes to his secretary, who had typed them up immediately. A New Testament. We reviewed it line by line. It was clear. It was precise. It was final. I signed the documents. Ben Carter and his secretary signed as witnesses. I stood up, and for the first time since Jeremiah's diagnosis. 6 months prior, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my heart. But the rage was gone, replaced by a cold, clean peace. I walked out of that office and onto the busy Atlanta streets. The sun felt warm on my face. The world was moving on, and so was I. It was done. Now let them come. 2 days later, a knock came at my door. This time it was one I actually wanted to hear. I opened it to find my grandson Jamal Price standing on the porch, shifting his book bag on his shoulder. He looked tired from his college classes, but his smile was gentle and genuine. In his arms, he was holding a brown paper grocery bag. "Hey, Grandma," he said, leaning in to give me a kiss on the cheek. His was a real hug, not the air kiss his mother Angela always gave. I was at the farmer's market over by campus, so I brought you those collard greens. You like the ones from the good vendor. And I picked up one of those sweet potato pies from Miss Rosie's. "Oh, Jamal, you did not have to do that," I said, my heart swelling. "I know, I wanted to." He did not wait to be asked, just followed me into the kitchen, his presence quiet and respectful. He set the bag on the counter and immediately started putting the groceries away. The greens in the crisper, the pie on the counter. Then he went to the kettle, filled it with water, and clicked it on. "You want some tea?" That was the difference. My children, Marcus and Angela, would have walked into the house, sat on the sofa, and waited for me to serve them. Jamal walked in and served me. He was the physical opposite of his mother's expensive flash and his uncle's loud arrogance. His jeans were faded, his sneakers were worn, but he was more of a man than his uncle would ever be. He made us both a cup of tea and we sat at the kitchen table, the one where he used to do his homework as a little boy. For a few minutes, we just sat in the comfortable silence, a welcome change from the suffocating quiet of the past week. "I miss him, Grandma," Jamal said finally, his voice low. He stared into his cup. "I really do. It feels weird. I was driving over here and the Falcons game was on the radio. I kept thinking I should call him to talk about the defensive line. I just keep forgetting for a second." He did not ask me for a thing. He was not probing about the will or the house. He was just present, sitting with me in our shared sorrow. He was the only one who had visited Jeremiah consistently during this last 6 months. He had come by after class, read the newspaper to his grandpa when his eyes got bad, and just sit and listen to his stories. A small, sad smile touched his lips. "You know, I was out in the yard before I came in, looking at Grandpa's roses. They are looking a little wild. I was thinking, I remembered what he taught me right there by that big red one." "What is that, baby?" I asked. "He was teaching me how to prune them. I was scared to cut so much off," Jamal said. But Grandpa just laughed and said, "You gotta prune the dead wood, Jamal. Cut it way back. It looks harsh, it looks mean, but it is the only way to let the new life grow. It is the only way to make the bush strong." He said the most important part of gardening was knowing what is alive and what is just taking up space. The parallel hit me with the force of a thunderclap. My eyes welled up, and I had to look away, but Jamal did not notice. I just cut back the dead wood. That is what I had done in Ben Carter's office. It felt harsh. It felt mean. But it was the only way. Jamal sitting right here in front of me, he was the new life. My decision. My cold, hard decision was just affirmed by Jeremiah's own words. It felt like my husband had reached out from beyond the grave and patted my hand. "He always did love those roses," I said, my voice thick. "Yeah, he did," Jamal said. He finished his tea and stood up. "Look, Grandma, I know you do not want to be a bother, but I am worried about you here alone. I'm going to come by every other day after class. I can mow the lawn this weekend. It needs it, and just help with, whatever. I do not want you to be alone in this big house." I held my secret close to my chest. This good, kind, wonderful boy. He had no idea this big house was now his. He had no idea that I had just saved his grandfather's entire legacy for him. I wanted to hug him, to tell him what I had done, to thank him for being the one. But I said nothing about the will. His kindness, his concern, his love, it was all pure. And I would not let money or the knowledge of money taint it. He was offering to help out of love, not for an inheritance. And that was the whole point. "That would be lovely, Jamal," I said. "I would like that very much." He gave me another hug, grabbed his book bag, and headed for the door. I watched him from the window as he got into his old rattling car, a 20-year-old sedan that sputtered to life. The car his mother was too embarrassed to be seen in. He gave a little wave as he pulled away. My heart ached with a mix of profound love for him and that cold, steely resolve. I turned from the window and looked at Jeremiah's empty chair. "Jeremiah," I whispered, "your legacy is safe." The call came exactly 1 week after the funeral, 1 week to the day. I was in the kitchen wiping down a counter that was already clean when the phone rang. I looked at the caller ID. Angela Price. My first instinct was to let it ring. But I knew this was a call I had to take. I picked up on the fourth ring. "Hello, Angela." "Mom!" Her voice was a symphony of false sympathy, high-pitched and strained. "Oh, Mommy, how are you holding up? I have been just sick with worry. I have not been able to sleep. I've been so devastated, I could not even bring myself to call." "I am managing Angela," I said. My voice was quiet. There was no warmth in it. "I am surprised you found the time to call me." I continued my words as cold and clean as the counter I had just wiped. "What with all your celebrations?" There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, a tiny shocked sound. What are you talking about?" "The Bahamas, Angela, the yacht, the champagne." The lie was immediate, practiced, and insulting. "Oh, that," she said with a forced, airy laugh. "Mom, you do not understand. That was a work trip. Malik's company insisted it was one of those awful spousal networking things. It was just dreadful. I had to smile when my heart was breaking. You know how those things are." I said nothing. I just let the silence stretch, let her lie hang in the air between us, suffocating. She rushed to fill the quiet, her tone shifting from fake grief to confidential gossip. And honestly, Mom, it was a nightmare. Things with Malik are just awful. I think this time it is for real. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "He is being impossible about money. He is threatening to freeze the accounts. He is—" She let out a long, dramatic sigh, a perfectly placed pause, and then the real reason for her call. I was hoping, I hate to even think about this right now, but with Malik being this way, did he make sure I was taken care of, in the will? There it was, not, "How is your heart, Mother?" Not, "I'm so sorry I failed him." Not, "I miss my daddy." Just, "Where is my money?" Her father is in the ground 7 days, 7, and she calls me about money. She needs her inheritance, not to grieve, but to fund her divorce from a man who was just as shallow as she was, the man we had paid for her to marry. Money. I said, my voice flat. "That is what you call me about. Your father is not even cold." "Mom, do not be like that." She snapped, the fake sympathy vanishing, replaced by her usual petulance. "It is a practical question. I am in a crisis here. Malik is trying to ruin me. I just need to know what to tell my lawyer." "I see," I said. I felt that glacial calm settle over me again. I was no longer her grieving mother. I was an adversary. "You want to discuss your father's estate, your father whose funeral you did not attend." "I told you it was a work. If you want to discuss your father's estate, Angela," I interrupted, my voice pure ice, "you and your brother will come to this house, together, next Sunday after service. We will discuss it then." "Next Sunday," she shrieked. "Mom, I am busy next Sunday. I have to meet with my lawyer. I have to—" I cut her off. "Then I suppose you will have to make time. If you do not, you will never know, will you?" Before she could protest again, I hung up the phone. I placed the receiver back in its cradle with a quiet final click. The battle line was drawn, and for the first time in her life, Angela was not going to be in charge. If Angela was the circling vulture, my son Marcus was the wolf at the door. He did not even bother to call first. I was in the den 4 days later, trying to sort through some of Jeremiah's paperwork, when I heard the arrogant rumble of an engine in the driveway. I knew that sound. It was the flashy German sedan, the metallic blue one, the one I knew for a fact Jeremiah had co-signed the loan for 3 years ago. The one Marcus claimed was essential for his image. Before I could even stand up, the front door opened. He did not knock. He had not knocked in 20 years. "Mom!" He called out, his voice echoing in the quiet hall. He walked into the den, already loosening his silk tie, which probably cost more than my entire grocery bill for a month. He looked annoyed, as if I had inconvenienced him by being in the den and not the kitchen. He glanced around, taking in the room, but his eyes were not filled with memories. They were scanning, assessing. His gaze lingered on Jeremiah's antique desk, on the silver frame photos, as if he were mentally appraising the antiques. "Mom," he said, and he came over to pat my arm. It was not a hug. It was a condescending pat. "You look terrible. You are not holding up well, are you? You should be taking better care of yourself." I moved my arm away from his touch. I did not want his false pity. "I am holding up Marcus. I have had to. I was the only one at your father's funeral." He had the decency to look annoyed but not ashamed. He scoffed a short, harsh sound and waved his hand as if brushing away a fly. "Mom, I told you that Miami deal was non-negotiable." He was already moving past it, his mind on other things. "It is done, and it is huge. It is a game changer." He gave me a brilliant false smile. "In fact, that is why I am here." Of course it was. He had not come to grieve. He had not come to comfort his widowed mother. He had come to make a withdrawal. He launched into a breathless pitch, pacing in front of Jeremiah's empty chair, his hands moving as he spoke. "It is a new, cannot-miss real estate investment, a commercial property. The financing is almost secured, but I need to show more liquidity. It is the kind of opportunity that sets up the entire family for the future." He stopped and looked at me, his eyes bright with greed. "I just need you to liquidate some of Dad's stocks, the ones he had with that old-fashioned firm. It is just sitting there, Mom. It is not doing anything. We could double it, triple it." He smiled triumphant, as if he had just offered me a gift. Dad would have wanted this, Mom. He always wanted us to be secure. It is to secure the family's future. The sheer audacity of it. He had skipped his father's burial for a deal, and now he was here to plunder his father's legacy to fund another one. He was using his father's good name to justify his own greed. For the first time in his 50 years of life, I said no. "No, Marcus." He blinked, his smile faltering. "What no? What do you mean no?" "I mean no," I said, my voice as calm and final as a closing door. "I will not be liquidating anything. The bank of Mom and Dad Marcus is closed. Permanently." His surprise turned to irritation. The charming salesman was gone. "What are you talking about?" "It is a simple, do not be emotional, Mom. This is business." "No, this is family," I replied, standing up to face him. "And your sister already called, with her hand out just like you. It seems you are both in a financial hurry." That got his attention. His eyes narrowed. "Angela, what did she want?" "She wants her inheritance to fund her divorce," I said plainly. "And you want yours to fund a game changer. You are both very concerned with your father's estate now that he is gone." "Well, of course," he said as if it were obvious. "It is our inheritance. We are his children." "Then you will both have to wait," I said. "I have scheduled a family meeting, Sunday after service. Here, your sister has been informed. If you care about this family future, you are suddenly so concerned with, you will be there. We will discuss the estate then." Marcus was furious. I could see the vein in his temple pulse. He was being denied and he was being summoned. He was not in control. Fine, he snapped, grabbing his keys from the table where he had tossed them. But this is ridiculous, Mom. You are being emotional. He stormed out, slamming the front door behind him. The sound echoed through the house, making a picture frame on the wall rattle. I walked over and straightened the photo. It was of Jeremiah and me on our 40th anniversary, laughing by his rose bushes. No, son, I whispered to the empty room. I am finally rational. Sunday arrived bright and clear. The sky was a sharp, cloudless blue. I sat in my usual pew at Ebenezer, and the sermon from Pastor Green was about reaping what you sow. I felt the peace of the Lord settle on me as we sang the final hymn, a quiet strength that firmed my spine. I shook hands with Deacon Stone and Sister Lillian at the door, accepted their hugs and politely declined their invitation for Sunday dinner. I have family coming over today, I said, and Sister Lillian's eyes told me she understood. I felt the peace of the Lord as I left the service, but I knew, sure as I knew my own name, that I was walking home to a war. They arrived at 2:00, an hour late, just as I knew they would. They pulled up in their separate expensive cars and walked into my house together, a united front of entitlement. They did not look like mourners. They looked like investors at a business meeting. Angela wore a white linen dress as if she were going to a brunch, not a serious family discussion. Marcus had on a polo shirt and slacks, and he was already checking his watch the moment he stepped through the door. They sat down on Jeremiah's sofa, the one he and I had picked out together. They sat on the edge of it, impatient. "Okay, Mom." Marcus started, not even bothering with the greeting. He crossed his legs, jiggling his foot. "What is this all about, Angela? And I have things to do. You said you would discuss the estate. So let us discuss it. What did Dad's lawyer say?" I sat opposite them. I did not sit on the small chair I usually preferred. I sat in Jeremiah's big armchair, the one that had been his throne. I felt his strength in it. I had a simple file folder on my lap. "I am glad you both could make it." I said, my voice perfectly calm. "Your father is gone, and before any lawyers get involved, we need to have an accounting." Angela rolled her eyes, a habit she had had since she was 12. "An accounting, Mom, really? Cannot we just let the lawyers handle all of this? Just tell us what he left. I need to know what I am dealing with Malik." "I will," I said, "but first we will have our own accounting." I reached into the file folder. I had not just looked at the photos on my phone. I had gone to the public library and printed them out. I slid the glossy color copies onto the polished coffee table between us. The first was Angela on the yacht, champagne glass high. The second was Marcus grinning on the golf course, his cigar raised in a toast. "Angela," I said, my voice quiet. "Your indisposition looked lovely in the Bahamas. And Marcus, that golf course in Miami looked very unavoidable." They both stared at the photographs as if they were snakes. The silence in the room was absolute. I saw the color drain from Angela's face. I saw the muscles in Marcus's jaw leap. They were caught. Their shock lasted only a second before it curdled into anger. It was not shame I saw in their eyes. It was outrage. "You spied on us." Angela gasped, her hand flying to her chest in a performance of victimhood. "You went digging through my social media." "How could you, Mom?" "She is right," Marcus snapped, finding his voice. "That is an invasion of privacy. What we do on our own time is— Your own time? I interrupted him. Your own time was during your father's funeral. While I was putting him in the ground, you were partying. You lied to me, both of you. That is not— Marcus began, but I did not let him finish. And you— I said to him, did not just lie. You came into this house 4 days after to try and get money from his widow for another one of your deals. You, Angela, called to find out how much your inheritance was to fund your divorce. It is not what it looks like. Oh, it is exactly what it looks like, I said. You think I'm just a grieving old woman who does not understand. You think your father was just an old fool with a checkbook? But your father documented. I reached back into the file folder. I pulled out the small black ledger. I opened it and placed it on the coffee table on top of the photographs. What is that? Angela asked, her voice wary. This is your father's accounting, I said. He wrote it all down. He documented the $250,000 you, Marcus, borrowed over the last 20 years for your failed businesses and your flashy cars. The loans you never paid back. Marcus's face went white. He documented the $180,000 you, Angela, took for your extravagant wedding, for the down payment on your condo, for the emergencies that were always trips and designer bags. They stared at the book, speechless. Marcus finally found his voice, his rage returning. That was a gift, he shouted, standing up. He was our father. He wanted to help us. That is what parents do. Yes. Angela chimed in, finding her footing. He loved us. You are twisting this, making it ugly. It was just family. I looked up at my son standing there in his expensive shirt, his face red with indignation. I looked at my daughter clutching her designer handbag. They truly, honestly did not see what they had done. I closed the ledger slowly. My voice was low, and it cut through their shouting like a razor. He wanted you to be responsible, I said. He wanted you to be grateful. He wanted you to be present. You did not just miss a funeral. You missed a lifetime of gratitude. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Then I delivered the final accounting. And now, you will miss the inheritance. The air in the room crackled thick with their shock and my resolve. My words hung between us, heavy as a casket lid. Angela, who had been so loud and defiant moments before, just stared at me. Her face was pale, her mouth slightly open. What? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Did you just say— Marcus, however, laughed. It was not a sound of humor. It was a harsh, ugly, disbelieving bark that bounced off the walls of his father's den. She is bluffing. He said not to me, but to Angela. He was reassuring himself. She is bluffing. Mom, you are grieving, you are not thinking straight. You are upset, we get it. But you cannot just miss an inheritance. He let out another sharp laugh. That is not how it works. We are his children. It is ours. The law says so. I had been sitting in Jeremiah's chair, but now I stood up. I was 78 years old, and my back ached, but I stood up tall. I looked down on my 50-year-old son and my 40-something-year-old daughter sitting on my sofa in my house, and I felt a strength I had not known I possessed. Oh, but you can, Marcus, I said, my voice as cold and clear as a winter morning. And you have. You are right, the law does say so. And the law says that your father's assets passed to me upon his death. They are my assets now. and I can do with them as I please. I took a step toward them. I met with Ben Carter the day after I buried your father, the day after I saw your vacation photos. I had him draft a new will. I signed it. It is filed with the court. It is legal. It is binding. And it is final. I let the words sink in. You, Marcus Washington, are disinherited. You, Angela Price, are disinherited. You will each receive $1 to be paid upon my death. So you cannot say you were forgotten. The color drained completely from Angela's face. She looked like she might be sick. Marcus, however, exploded. His face turned a deep mottled red, and he leapt to his feet, his fist clenched. You what? You cannot. That is illegal. We are your children. We will contest it. We will fight this. We will have you declared incompetent. You are a grieving, vindictive old woman. The threats which would have terrified me a month ago now felt like hollow wind. I stood my ground. Go ahead. I said, my voice never rising. Try. Please do. Because here is what will happen. You will force me to testify, and I will sit in that courtroom, and I will tell the judge how my two children, my only children, were too busy to come to their father's funeral. And then I will show them these. I gestured to the glossy photos of the yacht and the golf course still sitting on the coffee table. And then, I continued, I will hand the judge this. I tapped the black ledger, your father's own accounting of the nearly $500,000 you drained from him while he was alive, while you were neglecting him. And then I will put Ben Carter on the stand, your father's friend of 30 years, who will testify to my sound mind and my clear intentions. I looked my furious son dead in the eye. Do you truly think any judge in Fulton County will believe you were grieving? I asked him. Do you think they will side with the man on the golf course or the widow he abandoned? His mouth opened and closed. He had no answer. Angela, paler, now her hands visibly shaking, finally understood. This was real. This was not a bluff. Her voice was a terrified croak. Who? Who did you give it to? The church? Did you give all of Dad's money to Ebenezer? I almost smiled. Even now, that is all she could see. Money. No, I said. I did not give it to the church. I gave it to the only one in this family who earned it, the only one who showed up, the only one who loved Jeremiah for who he was and not for what he had, the only one who sat with him and read to him and held his hand while his own children were on unavoidable trips. I let the silence hang for one last terrible second. Everything goes to Jamal. The explosion was immediate. The revelation that it was Angela's own son, the boy she alternately ignored and patronized, sent her over the edge. She launched herself off the sofa, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. My son, she screamed, her voice breaking. My son? You gave my inheritance to my son. You set my own son against me. How could you? Undue influence. Marcus roared his mind, grasping for legal terms. That is what this is. The kid manipulated you. He knew you were alone. We will sue him too. I had heard enough. I had said all I needed to say. While they were still shouting, I turned my back on them. I walked out of the den, down the short hallway, and to my front door. I opened it wide, letting the bright, unforgiving Sunday afternoon light flood into the hall. They followed me, still sputtering, still threatening. Mom, you are making a terrible mistake, Marcus yelled. You will regret this. I stood by the open door and looked at them. My children. Two strangers standing in my hallway. their faces twisted with greed and rage. "This conversation is over," I said, my voice final. "You have not been welcome in this house in spirit for a decade. Now you are not welcome in person." "You cannot kick us out," Angela cried. "I just did," I said. "Goodbye, Angela. Goodbye, Marcus." I watched them stumble out onto my porch, their momentum carrying them forward, their mouths still working in disbelief. They turned back, but before either of them could speak another word, I closed the door. The solid click of the deadbolt sliding into place was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I had cut out the rot, just as Jeremiah would have pruned his roses. But now I had to tend to the new growth. I had to tell Jamal. I had dreaded this part almost as much as the confrontation. Jamal's heart was pure, and I was about to burden it with a secret that would place him squarely between his mother and his grandmother. He did not deserve to be in this war, but he was the only innocent soldier I had. He came by on Tuesday after his classes, just as he said he would. He had his old textbooks with him, planning to study at the kitchen table while I read in the den, just to keep me company. Before he could even open his book, I sat him down. "Jamal, baby, put those books away for a minute. I have something important to tell you." He looked up, his face open and a little worried. "Is everything okay, Grandma? Are you sick?" "No, I am not sick," I said, taking a deep breath. I sat down opposite him at the kitchen table. "I had a meeting with your mother and your Uncle Marcus on Sunday." His face tensed. "Oh, how did that go?" He knew them. He knew exactly how it would have gone. "It went as expected," I said. "They came to find out about your grandfather's will. They came to get their money." I told him everything. I told him about the yelling, the threats, the confrontation. And then I told him what I had done in Ben Carter's office. "I have disinherited them, Jamal, both of them, and I have left everything to you in a trust." I watched his face as the words sank in. I had expected surprise. I had not expected the look of absolute horror that washed over him. He went pale, and his hands, which had been resting on the table, recoiled as if I had placed a hot skillet in front of him. "Grandma, no," he whispered. He stood up from the table and backed away, shaking his head. "No, you cannot do that. I do not want it. I cannot accept it. Please, no." "Jamal, sit down." "No, Grandma, you do not understand." His voice was filled with a genuine panic that broke my heart. That is my mom's. That is Uncle Marcus's. It is their father's money. It is not mine. I did not do anything to earn that. Please, you have to change it back. Please, I am begging you. This will destroy what is left of this family." He was breathing hard, truly distressed, and in that moment I had never loved him more. I stood up and took his hands. They were trembling. "Jamal," I said, my voice firm, but full of all the love in my heart. "Look at me. That is exactly why you do deserve it. Because you are the only one who does not think he does. Because you did not do anything to earn it. You just were. You were here. You were kind. You were present. You never asked for a single thing." I squeezed his hands. "Your grandfather's legacy, baby, it is not the money. It is his name. It is his values of community and faith and hard work. Your mother and your uncle, they have tarnished that name. They traded it for yachts and golf games. You," I said, poking his chest gently, "are the only one fit to carry it. The trust is there to protect this legacy for you and from them. He was quiet, his breathing still unsteady, looking at our joined hands on the table. He was thinking, the wheels turning in his good smart head. He started, his voice low and hesitant. If I have to accept this, I cannot just take it. I cannot live off it. It would not feel right. It would feel like blood money. Then do not, I said, use it for good. He looked up and his eyes drifted past me toward the window that faced the backyard, as if he was seeing something far away. That cabin, he said more to himself than to me. That cabin up in North Georgia, the one we all used to go to. Grandpa always said he wanted it to be a place for the community. He said he dreamed of retiring there and opening a little place for the neighborhood kids, to read a place to get them off the streets. He looked back at me, and for the first time the panic in his eyes was replaced by a small growing spark. What if we did that? He asked, his voice gaining strength. What if we used the money to do just that? Not for me. For him. We could renovate the cabin. We could fill it with books. We could set up a fund for it to run forever. His eyes lit up, the full vision coming to him. We could call it the Deacon Jeremiah Washington Community Library and Reading Room. I had not cried at the funeral. I had not cried during the confrontation. But now the tears I had held back for weeks finally came. I wept right there in my kitchen. Not tears of sorrow or anger, but tears of a profound, bottomless pride. This was the inheritance. This was the legacy. Oh, baby. I whispered through my tears, pulling him into a hug. He would have loved that. He would have loved that so much. The next Sunday after service, I told Deacon Stone and Sister Lillian. I sat them down in my parlor and told them our plan. Their reaction was immediate and joyous. Hallelujah. Sister Lillian cried, clapping her hands. Eliza, that is the Jeremiah we knew. That is his heart right there. A library. Deacon Stone said, his face breaking into a wide smile. In his name. It is perfect. The church will help. We will get a volunteer committee. We will start a community book drive this instant. You will not be in this alone, Eliza. You are not alone. That afternoon, I felt a lightness I had not felt in a year. I was no longer a solitary widow. I was surrounded by my true family, united in a shared joyful purpose. I was standing at my front window, looking at Jeremiah's roses when the mail carrier came. I saw the envelopes, 2 of them, both from expensive-looking law firms downtown. I knew without opening them that they were the first official threatening letters from Marcus and Angela's lawyers. I picked them up from the mat. I looked at the embossed letterhead, and then I did something I never would have done a month ago. I walked into the den, slid them into the bottom drawer of Jeremiah's desk, and closed it. They felt heavy, but also completely irrelevant. The foundation for the real legacy had just been laid, and these pieces of paper were nothing but dust. The first winter without Jeremiah had passed. It was a long, cold, quiet season. The lawyers' letters from Marcus and Angela had continued for 2 months, full of sound and fury, until Ben Carter finally sent them a single, blistering reply that included Jeremiah's ledger and the Instagram printouts. After that, the legal threats went silent. Now spring had brought more than just new blooms to his rose garden. It had brought a fragile, tentative new beginning. I was sitting on the wide front porch of the cabin in North Georgia. a place I had not visited in years. The air was sweet with pine and sawdust. The sound of hammers and cheerful chatter filled the air. The Deacon Jeremiah Washington Community Library was in full swing. Deacon Stone and a team of volunteers from Ebenezer Baptist were on ladders painting the exterior a warm, welcoming barn red. My grandson Jamal was standing over a set of blueprints on a makeshift table, his brow furrowed in concentration as he directed two carpenters. He was a natural leader, patient, clear, and respected. He was his grandfather's grandson. A modest car, a sensible gray sedan I did not recognize, pulled up the gravel driveway. A woman got out. She was thinner than I remembered, dressed in simple jeans and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. It took me a moment to realize it was my daughter, Angela. She saw me on the porch and froze, her hand gripping the car door. She was holding a cardboard box. She took a deep, visible breath and walked toward me, her steps hesitant. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice quiet. "Hello, Angela." She stood at the bottom of the porch steps as if unsure she was welcome. My divorce from Malik is final," she said, looking at her shoes. I'm staying in a small apartment now. I was cleaning out my storage unit and..." She held up the box. "I have some marketing books and textbooks on event planning. I heard what you and Jamal were doing, and I am good at organizing events. If you need help with the launch or anything." Her voice trailed off. She was awkward, humbled, a version of my daughter I had never seen before. Before I could answer, a man hauling a heavy stack of 2x4s walked past us, his face hidden by the lumber. He dropped the stack near the porch and turned around, wiping his brow with a dusty forearm. It was Marcus. He too looked different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a deep, weary exhaustion. He had lost weight. He was not wearing a silk tie. He was wearing a faded t-shirt and work boots. His huge deal in Miami had predictably fallen through. Without our financial backing, his tower of cards had collapsed. His flashy German car had been repossessed. He had been forced to sell his condo and was, I had heard through Sister Lillian, renting a room somewhere. He looked angry at the world, but he was also present. He was here. "I heard from Deacon Stone that you were building shelves." He grunted, not looking at me or his sister. "I still have a contact at a lumber wholesaler. I can get the wood at cost. It is the least I can do." Jamal, hearing their voices, walked over. He stood between his mother and his uncle, the blueprints in his hand. He was the man in charge here. He looked at them both, his face polite, but unreadable. There was no grand reconciliation. It was tense, quiet, and deeply awkward. "Thank you, Aunt Angela," Jamal said professionally. "We can use the help. There is a committee meeting for the launch on Saturday. You can come to that." He turned to Marcus. "Thank you, Uncle Marcus. You can stack that wood over by the sawhorses. We need to cut the supports next." They both just nodded. My son, who once commanded boardrooms, and my daughter, who once commanded galas, both taking direction from a 22-year-old in a tool belt. I sat on the porch holding a tray of lemonade I had brought for the workers. I watched my children who had never built a single thing, who had only ever known how to take. And now, here they were, working, hauling wood, offering skills, building something for the first time in their lives, in the name of the man they had abandoned. As Marcus walked past Angela to get another load of lumber, Their eyes met for just a brief, awkward second. It was not forgiveness. It was not love. It was a shared silent acknowledgement of their new reality. They had lost their inheritance, their status, their comfortable lives. They had hit rock bottom, but they were here, and they were gaining something else, something hard and real, like the calluses I could see forming on my son's hands. I knew in my heart they might never be the children I had dreamed of. The wounds were too deep, the years of neglect too vast. We would never be the family from the pictures on the wall. But they were here. They were working for Jeremiah's name, not his money. And that was a start. Jamal came over to the porch, grabbing a glass of lemonade with a grateful smile. "It is looking good, Grandma. It is looking beautiful, baby." My gaze went to the new hand-carved wooden sign that was leaning against the porch ready to be hung. The volunteers from Ebenezer had finished it last week. In deep, elegant letters it read, "The Deacon Jeremiah Washington Community Library." I looked at that sign, and then at Jamal, and then at the two strangers who were my children, working silently in the Georgia sun. I turned my face toward the wind, and I whispered so only my husband could hear. "We are doing it, Jeremiah. We are pruning the dead wood. And look, just look at the new life." Watching my children and my grandson build something together in my husband's name taught me the final hardest lesson. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. I will never forget that empty pew at the funeral. I will never forget the pictures from the yacht. But forgiveness is about making space for a new truth. It is about seeing that people, even the ones who have hurt you the most, are capable of change. Josiah was gone, but his true work was only just beginning. Thank you, my dear friends. It's a blessing to share this time with you. If this story touched your spirit, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me, what city are you listening from? Dear, rate this story from 0 to 10 so I can see how far our stories travel. Feels like sitting on the porch with family, just fellowshipping heart to heart. May God bless you and keep you always.